Hi, my name is Dr. Peter Preston. I work at Polk State College, and I hold a Bachelor of Arts degree from Stetson University in English Literature. I have a master's degree from USF in mental health counseling and educational guidance, and I hold a PhD from Barry University in leadership and higher education administration. I've worked many years as a foster care counselor and also providing guidance counseling at the high school and the collegiate level. Today, what follows is a panel discussion with some college students from Polk County and about underage drinking. They're going to be using a PowerPoint that I developed myself for educational purposes and talking about it and as it relates to their own experiences.
All right, hello, my name is Ansley. I just graduated from USF with my bachelor's in elementary education.
Hi, my name is Kaylee. I just graduated from Florida State University with my bachelor's degree in history.
Hi, I'm Bailey. I go to Florida State University. I'm going to be a junior.
Hi, I'm Meredith, and I'm a sophomore at the University of Florida.
Hello, my name is Angela, and I'm a sophomore at the University of Central Florida.
Hello, I'm Zach, and I recently graduated from Lakeland Collegiate High School, and I will be attending UWF.
First, we're going to look at your education attainment. So right now, you are a high school graduate. You might be entering college, you might be in college currently, and that makes you, in this statistic, about 55% have at least some college. But as you can see, as the higher you get in your education attainment, there's fewer and fewer people that are able to get those types of degrees. And besides financial reasons, a big reason why people don't either attain their degree or they drop out of school in general is because they're having problems with alcohol or partying or other activities that are distracting them from their schooling. So you need to think about now where you are and where you want to be. And these are the odds stacked against you. And are you going to really let something get in the way of your goals or your dreams and that title that you want or that degree that you want to help with your career fulfillment?
All right, so one of the first things we're going to talk about, go ahead and kind of kick this off, is we're going to talk about trends in alcohol consumption amongst teens. So basically we've got a lot of graphs. We're going to get through them to show you basically the bottom line. So this graph here talks about drug use in high school seniors. This goes 75 to 98. As you can see, in the past 30 years or so, we've had a drop in abuse amongst high school seniors. This goes on into the next slide, which is specifically alcohol consumption, what we're talking about today. And this goes 8th through 12th grade, and you can still see that decline, and this goes up into 2005. The next graph is high school seniors who have ever consumed alcohol. You see a drop between 1980 and 2010 from 93.2% and 71%. And the final graph that we're going to kind of stay on for a little bit is done through the FISIS. So FISIS is an acronym for the Florida Youth Substance Abuse Survey, which is given every 2 years to students in Polk County, 6th through 12th grade. And what we found and sort of what we want to share with you today is that in contrast to what a lot of students understand or perceive as the norm, which is that all of their peers drink or a majority of their peers drink, what we found is that it's actually the opposite. And so 75% of students don't consume alcohol, which would put it at 25% do, which is, as we've seen, it's tracked that's significantly lower than it has been over the past couple decades, which is good news. It's really good news for us, and it's a good thing to hear. That means that less students are drinking. That means a higher number are able to go on and attain some of these higher degrees. They're able to kind of like set those goals, accomplish those goals without these things getting in their way. And so if you look at this graph just really quick, you can see a drop in use by age 13, binge drinking past 30-day use, but you do see what's higher up in that 40% is a perceived great risk of harm. So a lot of students are starting to understand that these are dangerous and negative sort of decisions that they can make, and they're, kind of choosing to pick a more positive approach. And so that applies, we're talking about 6th through 12th graders, but that does apply when you go up into college, because you're going to kind of see that same trend. You're going to see a lot of pressure thinking everyone drinks, when in fact that's not necessarily the case. So good news for us. But anyone have anything to add about that one?
Just that a lot of people tend to say that they might lie on these surveys, things of that sort, when in reality, these are valid surveys. They have parameters that let us know whether or not you're lying, whether or not you're saying that you drink a lot or you drink a little. And a thing that I like to tell a lot of people is, if you are lying on these surveys, or you believe a lot of people are lying on these surveys, how are you lying at a consistent rate throughout the country? Because we look at these numbers and we compare them with other states, other counties around us, and they're very comparable, which makes this survey very valid. And it lets us know that these numbers are as close as we can get to the real truth in the consumption of alcohol or what other substances we are measuring by this survey.
All right, we'd like to talk a little bit about the DSM-4 and how it relates back to alcohol use and abuse. The DSM-4 being essentially the diagnostic handbook for psychiatrists and psychologists to determine if you have a problem either with alcohol or really any mental issue. Bacchus. All right, the first point we'd like to bring up is simply alcohol intoxication, essentially getting drunk. First of all, you have to have recently drinking alcohol. There must be a clinically significant maladaptive behavioral or psychological change, such as inappropriate sexual or aggressive behavior, mood lability, impaired judgment, yada yada yada, and one or more of the following signs developed during or shortly after the alcohol use, which is slurred speech, incoordination, unsteady gait, nystagmus, impairment in attention or memory, or going into a stupor or even a coma. And of course, none of these symptoms can arise because of a previous medical condition. It must be because of the alcohol.
Right. A lot of times we think of alcohol intoxication as something that might be fun, lighthearted. We're going to go get, drunk, or we're going to have a good time. But there's a real issue. There's a real stigma in alcohol intoxication because as you can see, the issue of the disorders are real, and the consequences might be severe. So these are different issues that arise from alcohol intoxication. So intensive care unit admissions, 21% are due to alcohol intoxication. Alcohol-related accidents, 40%. Fatal driving events, 55%. Something that's really sad is the suicide attempts, which is 62, and the completed, which is at 33, which is still at a higher rate than most suicides that are completed. Child abuse under the age of 12 months, 89% due to alcohol intoxication. And 10% of those who drink alcohol actually consume 50% of the alcohol that there is. So this is a real problem that a lot of people don't think about. There are real realities to misusing the substance as well as the intoxication that occurs.
And what we were talking about earlier is that, you may not see all of these in the 4 years that you're in college, but your brain doesn't fully develop for women until they're 24, men until they're 28. And so, abusing alcohol when you're 18 and 19 years old does have a direct effect on how your brain is going to develop. And so some of these things will arise, let's say child abuse under 12 months. A lot of people you go to college with aren't going to necessarily have children where that would be an issue, but that doesn't mean 5 or 8 years down the road that they won't. And then these are things that could happen because of an alcohol dependency that's developed during these 4 years at college. So...
And to elaborate on that, the frontal lobe is actually the last part of your brain to develop, and it controls judgment, which is so important when you're in these sort of high-risk situations. So if your brain is already not fully developed, your frontal lobe is obviously not fully developed, so drinking alcohol would just further hinder your judgment.
It literally inhibits your ability to think.
Yes. You have to think of the long-term effects, not just what it's doing to you right now.
Right.
And that leads us into the next topic, which is very common on college campuses, which is about alcohol being the date rape drug of choice. You may not think of it as the most popular date rape drug, but it's actually very common in college campuses. 55% of female and 75% of male students involved in date rapes admit to drinking when the incident occurred. This could be the assailant or the victim being under the influence. For rape which takes place on campuses, alcohol was used in 90% of cases. That's almost all of date rapes have alcohol involved. It's a very big statistic. 15% of women have been victims of rape or attempted rape in their lifetime. 38% of women who have been raped were ages 14 to 17. And that is the high school age, so that's really big to think about. It's really young for women to be raped, and that's alcohol was included. 60% of rapes and sexual assaults are not reported to police, and 73% of sexual assaults were committed by a non-stranger. So someone you know, maybe a friend, someone you met at a party, they could definitely commit this crime being under the influence.
And also, did you want to say something?
Oh no, I was just gonna say one of the things that Zach had mentioned earlier was that and we've been talking about before is that date rape is one of those things that can happen to anybody, and you don't necessarily know. You don't know when you're gonna find yourself in a situation where something bad could happen. You could take a weird turn. You just don't necessarily know. Once you start drinking, you don't know where the night is gonna lead, and you don't know necessarily where the end game is gonna be. For you or the person next to you who's buying you drinks. You have no idea. And so what Zach had mentioned earlier to us was that, these aren't necessarily bad kids getting worse. Sometimes these are good kids getting bad. And so you really do have to be aware of your surroundings and aware of what's going on because you really don't know. It could be some guy that seems really nice or some girl that seems really great, and, you never really know when it's going to turn. So that's something to think about, and that will lead us to what Bailey wants to talk about.
The most pronounced, largest group of people that are actually affected when transitioning into college are those who were the highest achievers in high school. They might have done the best academically, or they're motivated, but transitioning into college, there's a lot of changes, and you're exposed to a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different substances, and you just have to be careful of what you get yourself into, because even though in high school you did great and you had it all under control, when you're transitioning to college, everything can change, and those who were actually the most productive in in high school, can just go the wrong way.
That brings us into some features of the disorder. So things to think about if you believe you may have an issue. Continued use despite problems. Are you having issues in school, not going to class, not doing your schoolwork, having issues with relationships or with friends? If you are aware of these issues and you're still continuing to drink even though you're aware that alcohol is a problem, this is definitely a sign that you have a disorder. The desired effect. Are you drinking socially while you're of legal age, out with friends, having a few drinks responsibly? This is different from if you are drinking to get belligerently intoxicated, or if you're drinking to simply get through your day. Those could be instances when you would have a disorder. The worst off friend concept. It's a defense mechanism. You might think, well, I don't have a problem because my friend so-and-so is so much worse than me. He drinks so much more than me. Or my other friend makes worse decisions than I do when he's intoxicated. That would be a defense that could point in the direction of a disorder. The most common changes involve disturbances of perception, wakefulness, thinking, judgment, interpersonal behavior. These are all skills that are very necessary to get you through a successful college experience. The first quote there, the key issue in evaluating is not the existence of the problem, but the individual's failure to abstain from using despite having evidence of the difficulty it is causing. So you're aware that you have a problem, you're aware that it's causing issues in your life, and you're still choosing to ignore it so that you can continue to drink. Variability. There may be periods of heavy intake, and there may be periods of total abstinence, times of non-problematic use, sometimes lasting for months. So you could have instances when you go months or even years without consuming alcohol, but then you continue to go back to it. And just because you're not using it all the time doesn't mean that your issue can't be characterized as a disorder. Other issues and features of disorder. The disinhibition effect, it interferes with the normal functions of inhibitory neurons in cortex. You have a wall of defenses. If somebody tells you that you have an issue and first you deny it, you're in denial, you say that you don't have a problem, then you try to solve the problem by yourself, which could lead to further problems. And then you contain it. You try to just ignore it and live with it. You're aware of it, but you don't feel like it's necessary to get help. All of these things can lead to anger, rigidity, charm, perfectionism, grandiosity, righteousness, and aggression, which again could cause even more issues in your life, but in reality, they are just stemming from the issue that you need to have taken care of. We have an acronym here, HALT. If you are drinking when you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, that means you are alcohol dependent. You need alcohol to help you get through your day, which is a serious issue. Now, men tend to have lower blood alcohol levels than women after consuming a given amount. Women tend to have lower body weights, lower muscle to body mass ratios, and 10% less water in their bodies. Now, this goes to show that women get intoxicated faster than men do, and it's not just because women have lower body weights. There are other factors that contribute to it. The therapeutic index, the ratios, it's basically proof that alcohol can kill you. 1 to 4 to 1 to 10. Basically what that's saying is that the 1 is what it takes to get you buzzed, and if you drink 4 to 10 times that amount, it could potentially kill you. 200 to 400 times per year, people die of alcohol poisoning.
So to take that out of just like a formula, if it takes 2 beers to get you buzzed, then once you're having between 8 and 20 anywhere in there, then there's a possibility that you could die. That's the dangerous, gap or bridge of numbers for you consuming alcohol. So just something to kind of be aware of. You don't have to be, it's not the point when you're drunk, it's the point when you're buzzed. And
Right.
so, and then that's where the ratio comes in. But
Right. And I think it's important at this time to at least assess what a drink is, because I think there's a little bit of misinformation about exactly what a drink constitutes as. So as you can see from this lovely slide that we have here, there are different amounts of alcohol in each drink that you consume. So if someone drinks, a tall glass of beer, that's going to be the exact same alcohol content as if you're drinking just a glass of whiskey or if you're drinking a glass of wine. And so you need to be aware of this, because if you're going to down a whole bunch of shots or of liquor and you think that you're not doing quite as bad because you're not, drinking 16 beers, in reality, the alcohol content in that is just as much, if not more, as 1 glass of beer. So that's something you need to be aware of.
And I think it's that if you go back to like the body mass thing too, if you're out drinking, let's say you're a woman and you want to have, you only want to drink vodka cranberry. Well, your vodka cranberry and, Mr. Good Looking across the bar and his beers are not the same. And so when you're considering that women do have that lower, body mass ratio and water in their system, not only are you at like a disposition to maybe get intoxicated quicker, but you're also not drinking at the same rate as other people in the bar. And that doesn't have to be girl to boy. I mean, that could be, if Bailey and I were out somewhere and I'm drinking a mixed drink and she's drinking a wine, you know what I mean? If I drink more of my, it's not necessarily, we're not going at the same speed. So something to kind of be aware of if you're out drinking.
Exactly. So then we need to exactly assess what alcohol dependence is, or I guess you could say an alcohol addiction. So first of all, we need to say that having a problem with alcohol is characterized by maladaptive behavior. That means it gets in the way of life. It gets in the way of your relationships. It causes issues in your life. And it can be diagnosed by 3 or more of these different symptoms based on the DSM again. So tolerance. So needing markedly increased amounts of alcohol in order to intoxicate you or in order to get you buzzed. You might brag about it taking 16 beers for you to get, buzzed or drunk or whatever, but in reality that shows you might have alcohol dependence or a problem with alcohol because it's taking you 16 beers to get buzzed, and that's not exactly normal. It can also be characterized by withdrawal. So you not being able to consume alcohol might make you upset. It might make you angry. You know, you might really, really try hard to go out this weekend and get something. If you can't, you get upset. There are other different characteristics that constitute dependence as well. So substance taking over, taking a large amount of the substance in short amount of times. Also, the persistent desire or unsuccessful effort to cut down or control your substance use. So I might tell my boyfriend that I think that you have a problem because you're drinking all the time, and he might get angry, say, you know what, fine, I won't drink for a month. Okay, he doesn't drink for a month, but that exactly shows you that you have a problem, because you wouldn't cut out broccoli in your life for a month. You wouldn't cut out water in your life for a month, because those things are healthy for you. And those things are, everybody generally knows and accepts them to be good for you, and alcohol isn't. And obviously, if you need to cut it out of your life, it might be something that's bad for you and that's causing an issue. And a lot of times, a lot of people think that this substance use is continued, and then if things get in the way, they can stop. But a lot of times it's continued whether or not you're having health issues or you're having problems with your relationships. So this dependence can really, attach onto you, and it's much more than what you think it is.
Absolutely.
And this slide is discussing specifically what is defined as alcohol abuse, and it is one or more of the following occurring within the period of about a year. So things like recurrent substance use resulting in a failure to fulfill major role obligations at work, school, or home. So if you end up missing class every Friday because you have to go out and drink, or you're too hungover from going out and drinking, then that would be considered alcohol abuse. Or recurrent use in situations in which it is physically hazardous. If you go and get smashed and you decide you're going to drive home, that is considered alcohol abuse, and it's a bad thing. Do not do that. Recurrent use-related legal problems. So if you keep going to jail and keep getting arrested for alcohol use, then that is considered alcohol abuse. And finally, continued substance use despite having persistent or recurrent social or interpersonal problems. So if you can't seem to get along with other people because of your drinking, that's because it's alcohol abuse.
Exactly, and I think we've all seen the ramifications of alcohol abuse, whether it's monetary or it's hurting relationships or just lives, Being underage, you have to take into account there's no legal limit. If you have alcohol in your breath, that's illegal. You can't drive with that. And I know people that have been pulled over and have gotten DUIs when they're underage, and it takes like $1,200 to get your license back, and you have to go through classes. And if you keep doing that, if you get many DUIs, they might take your license away. There's many different problems that can stem just from that alone.
And not just problems for yourself, but also you're endangering the lives of everyone that's on the road around you.
Exactly.
Your insurance will go up, so your parents probably won't be very happy about that. You won't be happy about it if you pay for your own insurance, but that's
That too.
I think that's one of those secret things that people don't think about in the DUI problem. That's a lot of, that's not just like a one-time fee. That's going to be something that's going to stick
that's
with you. And you're gonna pay for it.
continue.
But, and one thing that to touch on here when we're talking about abuse, I think that in a college setting, sometimes it's harder to identify abuse, like what is considered alcohol abuse, because of the culture of college and
Right.
the kind of idea that people go out and it's normal. Professors will joke about going out, in their classes and stuff. But like Zach was saying, how can we assess when it's a problem? Well, am I missing class every Friday? Because that's not necessarily normal. You may think that it's normal in your mind. You may think that everybody does it. This goes back to our discussion about the decline in abuse amongst teenagers. The same kind of thing here. In college, not everybody does that, and it's just kind of finding your place and finding those people who will be able to help support you in your goals that you want, and not feeling like you have to sort of fit into this majority that doesn't really exist of students that go out 4 and 5 nights a week. 4 and 5 nights a week, because that's not what you're there at college to do. And I think it really is amazing, and this is from personal experience, how quickly like you can go from like, oh, I just want to have the college experience and I want to go to this bar on Friday night, to where it really becomes ingrained in your social habits. Mm-hmm. And that's something that you don't want your social life, and because your social life reflects upon your normal life, and you don't want that to revolve around going to bars. You don't want that to revolve around consuming large amounts of alcohol, because that's just not something that I think you're going to want later on down the road. And speaking as somebody who's graduated, and Ansley might agree with me on this one, when you look back at your 4 years of education, there are definitely things that you don't necessarily want to characterize it. And I think that going to a bar, every night is definitely one of those things that you wouldn't want to. You're not going to stick it on your resume. So it's something that I think is more difficult in college as opposed to in a high school setting.
Exactly. And like she said, sometimes it's important to be able to find that group of people that aren't going out and doing those things that you don't believe in also. I know at my school we have late nights, which is a big party that the school throws, every other Friday. And they have lots of free stuff, lots of free food, really cool. They might have belly dancers out or live music, or they cater Subway, really good stuff. And that's something that you can go out and you can do without having to go hit up the bars, without having to go to the clubs, or go to any of the parties that are participating in activities that you don't necessarily want to be, involved in. And that can also say something maybe about Greek life, whether or not you want to, be in that sort of scene, and how you would deal with that with your other sorority or fraternity members, and talking with them about those sorts of issues.
Yeah, and I think that really it just has to do with what you're comfortable with, right. and that's and I think that honestly you can find yourself in any, in whether you're in Greek life or whether you're in the math club, like you're going to find people who find binge drinking appealing, and you're going to find people who don't find that appealing, and it's hard, and it really is very difficult to kind of navigate, depending on whether you're in a small school or a big school. You have to kind of navigate the waters, and there and there is a difference. I think Meredith mentioned earlier social drinking and responsible drinking. Right. So I'm 21 and Ansley's 21, so there's a big difference between us going and having a glass of wine on Thursday night with some of our friends in that kind of social setting, and then a social setting that involves around keg stands and like chugging beer until you're sick. Right. And like I said, there's not like an easy black and white answer where you can walk in and be like, I'm going to hang out with these people and I'm going to know exactly what they want to do. But you kind of have to, listen to yourself and assess the things that you want, and be able to have the self-control to dictate the kind of experience you have in college.
Exactly.
So and never feel uncomfortable. I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with as a freshman, and I probably struggled with in retrospect, is always feel comfortable expressing what you want. You know what I mean? Never and I think that's hard if you're in the Greek system, if you're new, if you're anywhere. It's hard because you feel like you can't necessarily express what you want out of things. It's very easy to kind of go with the masses and ride along and do what they think is cool. But you should always feel comfortable saying, I'm not, I don't want to do this, or this isn't something I want to do, because honestly, it's going to be terrifying, but no one's, going to hate you for it. That's the thing. And you'll find people that'll appreciate that. So now this has got really metaphysical and life philosophy, but it's relevant. So because I think a lot of people turn to drinking when they're young and they're starting college because they feel like that's what they have to do.
Right. Yeah.
But it's not, and you just kind of have to be able to have that self-awareness to be able to stand up for what you want.
And that could be the benefit of large organizations, whether it be Greek or a different organization, is that there are so many different people involved in every single one, that you will find someone, at least one person, who is in line with your ideals.
Yeah. You got to try on a lot of shoes before you find a pair, man. Yeah. Don't just buy the first ones you put on. You'll blisters for days.
Unless you're Zach here, right? Yeah. It's all right. He's got nice shoes, Converse.
Yeah. Great work, man.
Yeah.
So, moving on into our last few slides, these are just a few acronyms that are used that a psychiatrist or a psychologist might use if you were talking to them about how, to diagnose or gauge where your problem is with drinking, or if you even have a problem. So this is something you can use. There's two that we have. They're very similar. So the first is CAGE. which the C is, have you ever felt like you should cut down on your drinking? So pretty self-explanatory. Have you ever felt like you were drinking too much, you were uncomfortable with the amount that you were drinking, and you thought maybe you should dial it back? A, have people annoyed you by criticizing your drinking? So basically, we've talked about this a lot, so if somebody were to approach you or confront you about your drinking and the amount that you consume, does it, are you going to try to deny it? Is it going to bother you? Or are there enough people coming to you that it's, annoying just by the sheer mass of people that are saying something? G, have you ever felt bad or guilty about your drinking? Kind of goes along with have you ever felt like you should cut down? Also, have you ever done things while you were drinking that you felt guilty about the next day? I think that's something that's really important. If you consistently make decisions you're uncomfortable with or when you consume alcohol, then maybe we should look at, are you consuming too much or should you be consuming at all? Eye opener, have you ever had a drink first thing in the morning to steady your nerves or get rid of a hangover? So basically, do you wake up and kind of feel, like I said, hungover, maybe like going through a withdrawal sort of period as the alcohol comes out of your system and you feel like you have to have something first thing, a Bloody Mary, mimosa, a shot, I don't know, something you have to have in the first thing in the morning to keep yourself from feeling sick. The next slide is this really upbeat photo. Don't be those girls. And the next one is the taste, which the difference here is the tolerance is the first, which is basically we've been talking about. How many drinks does it take to make you feel that buzz? If you're drinking 10, beers or 3 or 4 mixed drinks before you feel buzz, that's probably a problem because that means your body has grown accustomed to the alcohol being in your system. A, have people been annoyed, or have people annoyed you by criticizing your drinking? Have you ever felt you need to cut down? For the C, and then the eye opener as well. And so the way that this is sort of examined is professional might say, if you get 2 points on this scale, then I would consider you to have a problem with your alcohol intake. The T for tolerance is considered 2 points. So if you are taking more than the normal amount to feel a buzz, then they would probably consider that you might have a problem. And then the others are worth 1 point. So if you were to either have a combination of the last 3 or the first one combined with another one, let's say, then they would probably assess you as having a problem with alcohol consumption. So just a few things to think about to kind of assess where you're at right now in your life or a few years down the road, how you are. But
Carry on.
that's all we have. Yep, carry on, my friends. If you could take this survey post-test for us, we'd really appreciate it.
Thank you.